Mr. Samsom will speak on what the Green Deal has in store for startups. Mr. Samsom, are you there? There you are, Mr. Samsom. Good afternoon. I'm going to give you the floor, sir, for the 15 minutes of your presentation, after which I will join you again for a couple of questions.
Yeah, all right. Well, hello, everybody there. I can't see you, but I hope I can sort of imagine who's in that room over there or on a virtual link. And I was asked to explain to you what the European Commission has to offer for startups. And let's be frank, that is not that much at the moment. Actually, it's the other way around. You have to offer a truckload of future to us. What we need from you is your brains, your creativity, your inspiration, especially your inspiration. I've experienced in the last year here in this commission building that we could use a little more inspiration. It's actually almost a miracle that from this environment where I'm sitting right now, you can make policies for the future that are inspiring and that are helping us. I can show you a little where I'm sitting. So this is the Berlaymont building on the Schuman Square in Brussels. It's gray, it's concrete, and we need much more than that. We need you. But okay, we have to offer you something back. And we need to make a deal here. So I'm going to tell you about what the Green Deal is and what it means for you and for the rest of Europe and hopefully for the rest of the world. You might remember, but this is a different era, in December last year, before COVID-19 entered our world, that the European Commission presented its environmental program, the European Green Deal. And that was actually different from normal environmental programs that we've seen dozens of in the last decade. And I think the main three differences were the following. First of all, for once, politicians didn't go for the feasible, for the lowest common denominator, for what you could just agree on, but nothing more than that. No, this time we went for what's needed, the urgency of the problems, not only the climate problem, also the biodiversity problem, the pollution of our Earth. And we set out a range of ambitions that we hadn't seen before, not by policymakers at least. The second difference was that when normally in the past, the European Commission would launch a strategy on transport and a plan on renewable energy and ideas and policies around agriculture and something about forests, all different parts. And this time we decided that actually the logic of doing one comprehensive plan is obviously self-evident. There is only one ecosystem and we live in it and we live from it. It's vulnerable. We do experience that once again now with even more urgency than before. And we should preserve it for ourselves and obviously for future generations. And the third difference is that actually it's not an environmental policy. It's a growth strategy. And I remember that because when we had it launched almost 9 months ago now, I received quite some criticism from the environmental corners of the NGOs where I come from, because obviously how on earth can you present an environmental strategy as something, as a growth strategy? The two do not combine. I beg to differ. I think we need a growth strategy that is sustainable. We need a new strategy for Europe. This is an aging continent in so many ways, and it desperately needed new momentum. And if you create new momentum, why not create the green future? And that was before COVID entered our world. Because fast forward, 4 months later, our world was turned upside down. Your world was turned upside down. The world's world was turned upside down by this pandemic. And for a moment, I must admit, I despaired a little because this happened before. This happened before. In 2008, an ex-vice president of the United States walked into Europe with a movie in his bag. an inconvenient truth, and he mesmerized the European society. I remember op-eds from Tony Blair and other government leaders telling their colleagues that it was time to act now. And all kinds of ambitious strategies by then were developed. And I, at that time, a member of parliament in the Netherlands, really thought that it was going to happen right now. This was the moment. A few months later, Lehman Brothers fell. And we haven't heard back from an inconvenient truth anymore. It's so obvious and it happens so often. An urgent matter wipes the long-term ambition off the table. But this time is different. I can now already conclude. I'm not sure whether it's different enough, but it is completely different. We managed, as of March up to now, in the last 6 months, to design a new growth strategy after COVID-19, actually pressing fast forward on what we imagined with the Green Deal, doubling down on the targets that we had. Because again, the logic is self-evident. After the Corona crash, we need to rebuild our economy, we need to create new growth, we need to create new jobs. If we rebuild our society, why build up the old one and then start the transition to a new green sustainable future? You can better do it right in the first instance. So now we have ourselves the recovery package with a ton of money and a ton of policies and a shitload of bureaucracy. Yes, because we are the European Union, but this time we might make a real difference. That is only if you bear with us, if you're there too. Because what I think is the biggest difference between 10 years ago and right now is not that we are better people or better politicians. No, the circumstances are different in terms of technology. 10 years ago, we remember that, an electrical car, quite a miserable figure. Offshore wind, hugely expensive. Solar panels, only for the happy few and the nerdy and the green geeks. But who else could afford that? And now, fast forward 10 years on, all those technologies have gone through an incredible cost curve and made an ambitious development into the future. So, is that enough? No, we need more. We need much more. We need you. So let me give you a few examples to conclude this short introduction where we need you. Because at the moment we are writing policies here. And while writing that policy, I think of the things that we need to make the policies reality, to make it happen. And one of them is, next week, we will present the so-called renovation wave. We're good at titles here. The renovation wave, which is actually a call to renovate, insulate, modernize, retrofit 210 million buildings in Europe. That's all the buildings we have, 210 million. Most of them right now, mediocre or even badly insulated, almost none of them with a smart grid in there, and hardly any of them with renewable energy technologies on top of it. We need to change that to change. And while writing that policy, you can imagine so many innovations that are needed to make that change happen. We need insulation material that is much better than the current ones, much cheaper than the current ones. We need solar panels not on our roofs, we need to have it in the building blocks of a building, integrated into windows, integrated into facades, integrated into the roof. We need smart grids. We need much better interconnection between the grid, the car, the homes, and whatever is around us in our neighborhoods. We need you to invent that. And not only the technology, but also we need social innovation. Because how to convince a homeowner to go through the cumbersome process of retrofitting his house? You know, it costs quite some money up front. You earn some back in your energy bill, but you never get rich of it. And how to make that attractive? We are busy with those questions here, but I know one thing for certain, that is a family in, let's say, somewhere in Sofia, who decides to plan on renovating its house. The last person they are going to call is Brussels. And so we need much more than just technology. We need also social innovation, but also in other fields, electrical mobility. charging stations, those charging poles that you can now see and drip by drip coming into the streets. Imagine what happens if all the streets in our cities have those poles. It's going to be hugely ugly and very, it costs an enormous amount of electricity. So we need more beautiful systems, we need more efficient systems, we need wireless charging, obviously, in the end, or maybe even soon. And if we go out of our cities, agriculture, we need smart farming. We need precision farming. That's the only way we can combine the enormous need on food and supplies and also biomass with sustainable agriculture. And precision farming requires technology and it requires know-how. So how to translate that technology to a farmer in Western Europe, but actually in the whole of the world. That's only 3 examples where I need you. And what do I have to offer? Well, my commitment to make that happen, to stay the course, because the worst thing that can happen is in a few years' time, again, the sustainable ambitions are wiped off the table and we are going back to our old lives doing something else because there's another urgency coming on. You have our commitment that will not happen this time. And also money, but not directly. The worst person who can finance your startup is Brussels. Take that from me. So what we are going to do is disseminate that money to national interlocutors, to intermediate services, national promotional banks, but also they are not very capable of doing this. So we need to find new ways. I'm happy to hear your ideas about it because we haven't figured that out yet. So here we are with an enormous opportunity in front of us, with a dull building that is making policies that could change the world, and with a room full of startups that will change the world. So let's get going.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Diederik Samsom. Very impressive what you had to say to us, but please do allow me to tease you just a little bit. That's my role here. It seems to me that Europe has done things the way they have been done for a long, long time. And now I hear you say, we're going to turn it around and we need you. So that's 2 big steps in one turn, if you ask me.
Yes, but they are connected because we do it differently now. We need different input. Normally, we would only work, or Europe works with governments. That's who we know. We have only 27 phone numbers here, but that will not do the trick this time. So, in the recovery package that we designed just in the last few months because of COVID-19 and the need to recover from that, and we call it Next Generation EU. Again, we're good in titles. In that package, there's a lot about trying to get that money as soon as we can into new innovations, onto the ground, so to speak. And as I said in the last part of my introduction, we haven't figured it out yet how to do that exactly. We will figure it out with your help.
Okay, so 2 things come to mind. First of all, how did the process go within the Commission, the European Commission? It's not one known specifically for its versatility and for its, you know exactly what I'm trying to say. So how did decisions got taken? How did that go, the process?
Well, I'm new here too, so I can't compare with the past, but I can compare with the stories from the past. And at this time, it was completely different. Maybe COVID-19 helped a little. It's strange to say that, but there is advantages in such a crisis, obviously, because they change the way we operate and the way we think. They raise the urgency and they make us think out of the box. Also, the start of the new mandate or a new commission was different. You might remember, but that's all politics, the way the new commission president was chosen, basically picked out of thin air, somewhere out of Germany. And she had to make a splash in order to get elected. And the European Parliament would only elect a president with a hugely green ambition. So there we are. Mm-hmm. Second, I think the third most important reason why this building has changed in its decision-making and its sense of urgency is actually why all buildings in Europe, also companies, factories, schools are changing. It's our children. It's our youth. Mm-hmm. We've seen that little girl in Sweden sitting in front of her school, striking.
Yes.
That was a lonely sight for almost 2 years, but she kept going, and all of a sudden that spark hit the rest of Europe. And now we are all sitting as adults, some of us with children Greta's age or around that age. And I have the experience that in every conversation I have here in this building with people that think they have a lot of power, and sometimes they do, so CEOs, heads of state, ambassadors, etc. In all those conversations, at one point, they start talking about their children.
Yeah.
Asking pretty pertinent questions about what they're actually doing to save the future.
So one actually wonders why that didn't happen before. Why weren't we asking our children earlier? Why have we started now?
Well, actually, why was my generation when we were young?
Yes.
I remember joining Greenpeace from the university from Delft, and I was actually the only one in 21 of my fellow graduate students, and 18 of them joined Shell, and the other 3 joined McKinsey. Mm-hmm. And that was basically that time. I don't blame anybody for that. It was a different age and time. And I think this time is different. We have a youth that I'm too young to remember the 60s, but I was told by my parents that at that time they were also pretty activist. But this time is again, we can see that happens, and they influence society just by being on the street. But more important, it's the conversation on the kitchen table with their parents.
You're right. I suppose it also helps that the staff at the European Commission is a lot younger now, and they probably are in favor of this Green New Deal.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure whether it's younger.
No.
We are. No, well, the European Commission is actually the biggest European brain drain that I know of, and that's an advantage for the European Commission. I'm not sure whether it's an advantage for the member states, but we attract a lot of talent from member states. I have in my cabinet colleagues from Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, Slovenia, Malta, and they all have double IQs from mine. And they're very smart. So that's actually, the age is not the difference. This is a pretty smart building. The AQ, as we call it, the emotional coefficient, mediocre.
It could be, yes, I understand. I see there's some questions coming in through the chat. Let me just take you through a couple of them. What is the role and potential of digital innovation in the Green New Deal? Somebody asks.
Yeah. That's a question we ask ourselves too, because I didn't put any emphasis on it, but actually the transition that we want to go through is what we call a twin transition. So it's green and digital. I think it's actually one, because the digital enables the green transition in so many ways that we haven't figured out yet.
Yeah, it seems to me that the digital world has taken flight ever since COVID-19 started. We could have started earlier, couldn't we, Mr. Samsom? Why it took us so long to turn digital?
Yeah, but that's the essence of every innovation. Once you have it, you start asking yourself, why didn't I think of that before? Mm-hmm. Well, and then you can write books about it, but normally you need a special set of circumstances to get on. And COVID is one of those circumstances where all of a sudden we do realize that digital learning has to take a huge flight in order to make ourselves more resilient for next pandemics, because they will come. Yes. But also in other ways, we change our world, and our circumstances change our world. And when I look at it, it's my colleague, Kim Jurgensen, who's the head of cabinet for Vice President Verstager. And Verstager is the guru of the digital transition. And when I talk to him, he sometimes despairs a little because of the huge differences all over Europe in the way the digital environment has taken off. Yeah. Estonia is it's a nice example. They are good at marketing, and they have a pretty good digital environment too. But the Netherlands is absolutely number 2. And Germany is almost on the last place, and that's our neighbor. Huh?
So it seems to me we need to level that all over Europe if we want a certain type of quality to be in effect everywhere. Another question coming in through the chat room. Do you believe that economic growth can go hand in hand with environmental protection? That's a question that we're going to hear all day, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's well, as I recalled, it was also criticism that we got from presenting the environmental strategy, the Green Deal, as a growth strategy, because at that time people were also saying, hey, that's a contradiction. They cannot go together. Mm-hmm. But a smart man sometime at one day told me that growth does not only have a speed, it also has a direction. And we need to get into the right direction with our growth.
What are you saying? Are we now moving in different directions?
Well, we did in the last 150 years.
Yes.
So we need to change direction. I'm not sure whether that also means changing speed. Maybe in the beginning, because changing direction, well, you can imagine a car, you have to slow down in order to take the turn. Mm-hmm. But in the end, I'm not sure whether what type of growth is, or what speed of growth is important or sufficient, or even makes it impossible to get to a sustainable future. I know that there is a direction, and you have the wrong one and the right one, and we're doing everything to get into the right direction.
I'm sure I remember vaguely some scientific formula that talks about speed and direction, but I don't have it in my head at this moment. One more question: is COVID-19 helping or hindering this green transition in Europe, worldwide even?
Difficult to tell, because we are in the midst of it at the moment. Paradoxically, as I explained before, it's helping, because it creates a sense of urgency, and yes, it creates an enormous amount of public money. Well, not sure how we do create that, but all of a sudden there is that urge to spend public money into a certain direction. Mm-hmm. And since it's money, we have a bit more steer, not everything, by the way, we don't have it fully under control, but we can steer that money into the right direction and create that sustainable future. So at the moment, I think the net result is a positive one, but I'm bracing for the next half a year.
Yes, aren't we all, actually? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because at the end, it hampers the way we live, it hampers the way we make progress, it hampers everything in our lives. And if that continues for a while, we need to gear up for different ideas and different ways to get out of there.
Yeah. Well, we've got the smartest people in the world watching today, so they will be one step ahead of us at every corner, I'm sure. When will all this be in effect? You talked about all those buildings. You've talked about the many aspects of the Green New Deal. When am I, as a civilian, going to notice the difference?
Very soon, not because of us, but because it already started. For instance, you will see it on our streets. I mean, just now Volkswagen released the ID.3, which is the electrical car for normal people, and that will be followed up by about 23 of those, and you will see the image on the street will change very soon, and also on our roofs, because solar panels are now hugely profitable. But that's actually just the beginning of it. We have a trajectory of 2 and maybe even 3 decades ahead of us, and I cannot plan for that. I have 5 years here. So I've set myself and ourselves here a goal that within 5 years, Europe must be onto an irrevocable pathway towards that sustainable future. So by then, we must have set the direction of our growth into a definite track towards the right point on the horizon. Because if we haven't done so in 5 years' time, I would almost say don't bother trying.
Why is that? You must always continue trying.
Yeah, we will, because the humankind will always keep trying, but we have to look at the science and be worried about what we need to do at what speed. So we don't have all the time of the world anymore.
Yeah,
I'm in a hurry.
Another question, probably the last one that I have time for with you today, Mr. Samsom. How are we going to change the system of short-term shareholders?
I'm not sure where we are. I hope we can incentivize the system towards long-term shareholders. So that might be the better way to solve this problem. What we need to do with companies is that they need to be incentivized to look at the longer term future. If you look at family companies and that are created by a family, owned by a family, and given on to their spouses and the rest of the family, you can always see the long-term vision there because they just think 3 generations ahead.
Yeah.
And with stockholding companies, that is hardly the case, and you can't even blame them sometimes because they need to deliver for their shareholders. This is a real issue that we're working on right now. That's the third vice president of the European Commission. We don't have more than 3 yet. We're not going into Chinese systems, but still we're getting there. So the third one is Dombrovskis, and he's working on sustainable finance with loads of branches on that tree. One of them being to try and first of all lure, but then force companies also onto that sustainable pathway. And the good part of this story is that a lot of those companies desperately want to get on that pathway. It's sometimes incompetence or other reasons that they don't get there.
Okay.
But most of them really want now.
Yeah, so the paradigm shift has taken place.